Right now we have a basic background plate here. And if we look at this 100%, that might be okay. You can see there's a tiny bit of highlight over here, but it's actually not terrible. We can go in here and tweak some of these settings just a little bit. Like we may want to soften the edge. Ooh, perfect. Just a little bit more than what it was. Maybe pull the choke back just a hair. Now, if you want to just do this from scratch, show you how you might do that. Let's get rid of our background here and go to alpha so we can see what's going on. You probably want to adjust the pedestal, and that will kick out most of what's happening with the rest of the screen. That's kind of like your screen gain, or how much green it's going to be looking at or sensitive to. That right there did a pretty good job of getting the rest of the junk out. Now we can go back to composite and work on the edges. So let's go back to 100%. Check out what's going on here in the edges. You can see down here with the shadow, it kind of looks nasty. Now, you can adjust the tolerance a little bit. Maybe just leave the transparency where it is. Highlight's not going to do much. Shadow's going to give you a little bit more of an edge there. Now we can maybe soften that just a hair. Bring the choke up. You don't want to bring the choke up too much because what's happening down here is also happening up on my face. So you can see that's obviously going to be a big problem there if I clip off most of my ear. But something like that is pretty cool. And then maybe come here to the midpoint. I can't tell if that's doing anything. And yeah, that looks pretty good. We can tweak the spill suppression just a little bit. There you go. You can see that it's a subtle. You zoom into like 400% here so you can see what's going on. Look at just the edge of my arm here. It's green, but as I push up the spill, we get that to change just a little bit to more of a yellow type color. And we adjust the luma just a hair. Yellow is going to be a lot closer to skin tone. So that should be pretty cool. So now we can just check to see what this looks like with the background. That's not too bad. Not too bad. Now, the one thing that is a little problematic is anytime there's motion blur. So check this out here. We scrub through. Anytime there's motion blur, there's kind of a problem because we have stuff that we need to have in there, but it's kind of mushed a whole heck of a lot with stuff that we don't want in there, which is the green. And if we take this effect off, you can see what I'm talking about. And this plugin is only going to do so well with those edges. Now, if you shot this at a high enough shutter speed, so where you didn't have any motion blur, then this wouldn't be a problem. But that also would look kind of unnatural. There is probably a little bit more that you can do to sell this key effect in Premiere. One thing would be to add a little bit of color correction. So what I might do is nest this first clip so we can apply some color correction in the form of curves. Now, normally I might use some different color correction plugins. I really like Colorista. You can see that this was a pretty overcast day, so what I might do is flatten out the contrast here on this image to more kind of match this kind of dull, nasty looking business here. Kind of like that. Also, I might throw a curve on this bottom layer here and try and get some of the blue tones out. So maybe we'd push the red up just a hair, pull the blue down just a little bit. I like to make these nice and big so you get a little bit more kind of resolution for your movement. Just so get the tones are a little bit more matched. Then what I might do is select both of these and nest them together and then apply another curves to the whole thing and then boost everything up just a little bit in the highlights. And giving both of these kind of a color correction together will help sell the effect. Now what you might do is add a little bit of blue in the low kind of tones here. That's like way too much. And then maybe that's not really working. Maybe pull the green back just a hair. And then throw a tint on the whole thing. And just dial back saturation. Now it's another thing that we can do too in this top clip is throw a tint effect on here. Oops, where'd that tint go? And dial this back just a little bit because overcast days are usually kind of desaturated. So maybe just a hair. Oh yeah, that looks maybe a little bit less. That looks a little bit better. Oh yeah, look at that. That's a little bit nicer. I think that sells that kind of nice. Then the other thing that you can do, and we'll do this a little bit more in After Effects, is give the whole thing kind of a grain, which really helps to sell what's happening here and here. And if there's a grain applied to everything, it kind of just tricks your eye into believing that the whole thing is one piece. So if you have a good grain plugin, you can use that. If not, you can use just a noise plugin that's built into Premiere. And that's okay. It's not great. You can just look at what's happening here. Maybe give it like 3% noise. Eesh, boy, it's not a great. And maybe just take off color noise. Maybe like, what's 4% look like? Yeah. It's kind of small, this noise. Maybe like 2.5. The other thing you can do is use overlay effects. A while ago, I created a grain overlay from After Effects. And this is what that looks like. Perfect, right? No, that looks awful. But what you do, and this was just, I set it up to make a grain that had some alpha, which is why it has some transparency. And you can set this to overlay and then bring the opacity down a little bit so you can just see it kind of peaking. You can try some of the other blend modes too, or if you have a plugin like Magic Bullet Looks, you can use that as well. You can go in here to the look editor and go, whoa, hey, get back here. Go in here and add film grain. You can also do a vignette. Just a real subtle vignette. Be something like that. That might help. And then we'll check this grain. Scaling in this viewer is not, it's not the greatest. I usually like maybe around 3%. Cool. And so let's just check out what it looks like. We'll copy this, paste it up here. And then we will take all the effects off of this. So here we have the uncolor corrected version. We make this nice and large. There you go. And then this is with a little color correction, a little bit of grain. See how that just, it's almost like magic. That grain and the matching, just a little bit of tweaks in the color correction really helps sell what's going on here. You see a little bit of grain in my forehead and a little bit of grain in the highlights of the sky here. And that just kind of tells your brain, hey, this is all one thing. And I think it works pretty well. Now it's going to have kind of a hard time chugging through all that without pre-rendering any of it. But now let's check out what we can do in After Effects.